Like any machine, satellites don't last forever. Whether they are checking out greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, tracking the weather, or studying distant stars, satellites eventually get old, break down, and stop working. Just like your old washing machine or vacuum cleaner. So, what happens when a satellite's number is up? There are basically two ways to deal with them depending on how high they are orbiting. For satellites that are cruising in low Earth orbit, engineers use the last bit of fuel they've got to slow them down. This makes them drop out of orbit and burn up in the atmosphere, kind of like a shooting star. It's a controlled crash that wipes the satellites out without leaving any junk behind. For satellites hanging out in medium Earth orbit or geostationary orbit, slowing them down enough to fall back to Earth takes a ton of fuel, which is not really practical. So instead, we send them to a graveyard orbit around 200 miles further out than the farthest active satellite, around 22,400 miles above Earth. This keeps them from colliding with active satellites and turning into dangerous space junk. When it comes to getting rid of smaller satellites in low Earth orbit, it's pretty straightforward. As they plummet towards the Earth, the friction from the air heats them up and they burn away at thousands of miles per hour. No mess, no fuss. But what about bigger stuff like space stations or large spacecraft in low orbit? These big guys might not completely burn up before hitting the ground. To handle this, space operators plot a course for their final plunge to make sure any leftover pieces land in a remote area. This place is known as the Space Cemetery, tucked away in the vast Pacific Ocean, far from any people. As more and more satellites are launched, space junk becomes a bigger problem. Space debris or space junk includes old satellites, used rocket parts, and fragments from collisions or explosions. Even small bits of debris can cause serious damage because they are flying around at super high speeds. To tackle this issue, the space industry and international groups are coming up with debris mitigation guidelines and looking into active debris removal technologies. One idea is to use deorbiting sails on satellites, which slow them down and make them fall back to Earth faster. Another cool tech in the works is laser-based removal, using lasers to zap debris and push it out of orbit so it burns up in the atmosphere. Satellites in graveyard orbits are basically retired and don't pose much of a threat to active satellites. But they will be floating around out there for a long time. As we put more and more stuff into space, we might have to send out space garbage trucks, which is futuristic missions that use robots with nets, harpoons, or other gadgets to clean up all that space junk. For now, these old satellites are out of the way, but we need to keep working on better ways to manage and remove debris to keep space safe and sustainable. Thanks for watching.